Nonprofit Voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. Casey Cares is proudly sponsored by the Marion Kaufman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. The millennial population, those born between 1981 and 1994, comprise 72.1 million people in the U.S., and it's nearing half of the workforce. This significant group wields major influence in buying, in opinion making, in donating. So how do they impact the nonprofit sector? What are their giving preferences and what influences them? We're so glad to welcome back the millennial maven, Katie Lord with Proof Positioning. Welcome back. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with you and to be chatting with Casey Cares, the Kansas City nonprofit voice.
Well, thank you for being with us. Okay, let's jump in and let's make sure we've got our definitions. I know when we talk millennials, we go through this, but I think for our audience, it's really helpful to say, who is this group?
Well, and you hit the years right on the head. So millennials were born usually based on Pew Research is the one I always go with, is normally 1980, 1981 to 94, 95. But the most important thing I want us to all start thinking about is millennials are nearing their 40s now. So we cannot be seen as the kids' table anymore. We are out in the workforce. We are having children. We're getting closer in our careers. We're starting to reach mid-career, actually. The first of us are starting to go into some of our peak earning years. And it's time that we rethink how we think of millennials and how we talk about them, because really we are starting to overtake the workforce, exactly as you said. And, that's happened and sped up a little bit more as we've seen the pandemic increase. We are starting to make more of the buying decisions and really be drivers of the marketplace, much more so as our older generation compatriots start to move out of the workforce and at higher rates because the pandemic sped it up a little bit.
Well, now that we have a definition that we can work with, we're going to start with the P word, and that's not today proof, but pandemic and pivot. It's been over a year. It's been a crazy time. From your position in working in nonprofit, philanthropic side, what are your impressions of what's taken place in the nonprofit sector?
Well, to use another P word that's not popular, unprecedented, felt the need to get that one in. But it really has been a time that I think it has forced us as a sector to reevaluate how we are going to move forward. I think from the special events, we've understood that while special events are an important piece, they can go away. And that was something that we never thought would happen. And so it's really become more important than ever that we are looking at our donors, thinking about retaining our donors, focusing on who we already have, fish in our own ponds, if you will, because we're not maximizing the donors that we already have. And now's the time to show those donors love, double down on the donors that we have. And acquisition became a very crowded space during the pandemic. Everyone had a problem. It was important that we get our messages out, but we get our messages out in a space that they could be accepted. I mean, email was, I don't know about you, my email box was just jam-packed. We were getting more social media messages. People were going even more into the digital space, which became very cluttered. And so it was, how can we stand out? And, a lot of it came down to personalization. It came down to how we know our donors and how we talk to them and how we express our interests and we segment our donors. and their interests. And it really also came down to some of just the good old fashioned techniques of fundraising, of calling people, picking up the phone, sending out our direct mail pieces. And I think that that's going to become an even greater part of reimagining how we talk moving forward. Everyone, was in the same situation. So scarcity felt real for so many of our organizations because we all had the same impacts and direct needs that we needed in order to continue to provide our missions and services. And, I think that the pandemic is going to have a long tail. Yes, we are getting out of it, if you will. People are getting vaccinated, but that doesn't mean philanthropy as usual is going to start back up. Special events are going to start back up. Philanthropy is going to be changed moving forward. And in some ways, I think for the better. So I think it's a time for our sector to embrace this moment, this shakeup, and really evaluate how we're going to, come into the next at least decade of fundraising, if not further.
I think you bring up some really interesting points there. I want to go back to one of them. Personalization.
Mm-hmm.
How should nonprofits do that? What are some tips? As you said, the digital component has been great. I mean, I think I can't imagine a pandemic without it.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been really isolating. I wish I'd had stock in Zoom.
Yes.
So with all the tools that we now have to personalize, yet we have clutter. So
yes.
Wise one, what are some tips? What are some ideas to share that folks could possibly consider in the nonprofit sector?
Mm-hmm. And so what I'm going to say, this is especially for millennials, but I think this spans all generations, is we expect the Amazon experience. We expect the Netflix experience. These organizations, quote unquote, know us. They recommend things to us based on our interests and behaviors, and what we're emotionally invested in. That is how we should be looking at it from a nonprofit sector. In the past, I would say we would send out messages in mass and hope that we hit the right chords with people. Now, I expect organizations to know what programs I'm interested in, to understand why I choose their organization or another over another, and to play into that with the content that they feed me. I expect video. I expect to receive email messages that are aligned with my past giving behavior and again, why I'm invested in your organization. So the days of kind of, to use an old term, spray and pray of we're going to send out this message and hope that it resonates with people is over. And that's how that's how we lose market share in people's email boxes, is if I see something in a title or a headline that doesn't reflect what I believe in or why I give to your organization, I'm not even going to open it. So I'm just going to delete it, and I'm going to not even think twice about it. So some things that organizations can do are sit there and do some basic segmentation. Go back and see what content your donors have engaged with, and start to separate people. Okay, are you a dog person? Are you a cat person? Do you like to give to, program A or program B? And to set up some messaging, go back and see what you've given to in the past and go, okay, there's something about this messaging that's resonating with these people. We need to send more like that. So, basic segmentations can be how long someone's given to you, if they're a volunteer versus a donor, but spending some time in our donor databases and with our development plans and saying, okay, who are my donors? And whether you create personas or not, who are these individuals and how can I chunk them into interest groups and talk to those interest groups differently? You can get really broad or you can get really minute in your time, but just if you have 3 programs, who are the donors to those 3 different programs? And start there. Start with some of those really basics. Start with how long they've been giving to you. If someone's been giving to you for 10 years, they probably know a lot more about your organization than someone who's been giving for 2. So those education pieces should be different. So those are some really easy ways. Also, you have got to stand out in your inbox with your title, your subject line. If it doesn't catch my eye immediately, and if it doesn't call to something of interest, it's lost, it's noise. And so really spending time with your subject lines, which to me is one of the hardest things to do, but that's where you really need to spend your time, is serving up that content and then thinking of a new way to express what's in that message.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much. I think perhaps a challenge might come up for those nonprofits that are smaller, and can they afford that software or that data segmentation? Is there more out there that really works that's not so expensive?
Well, and that's something that you don't need to pay anybody to do segmentation. That's something you should, if you have a CRM, you should be able to run reports. If you have a spreadsheet, you can sit down and print that out and spend some time. Really, the forward investment's going to be your time. It doesn't really need to be technology that can do it. You can sit with a highlighter and say, okay, based on my conversations, red highlighter is, this program, yellow highlighter is this program. Especially in smaller organizations, you probably know your donors better than your larger ones. So this is probably, a day or 2 project, but it doesn't need to be software. And I think that that's, again, where sometimes we think we aren't equipped with the tools to do something. So we're just like, okay, well, I don't have the time, or I can't do it, or I can't afford something. When really, if you break it down into chunks, or you run some reports of what you already have, or even just look back, based on, you could run the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. That's a great little tool that you could do and run back and see, okay, where are people giving? Where are they not? It really is, to me, a time. It's much more of a time. And so those are the tools that you need. You need time and knowledge of your donors, your donor development team, and, sitting down and having those conversations to segment, or, kind of drag and drop. But the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, that is a great tool. You can just Google that and it will take you right to that tool. That's a free tool to download and really get a good idea of who your donors are and what they're giving, and where maybe some gaps are. But also, it's just going back and looking at analytics. That's free too. We all can look at our Facebook analytics and see what performed well and what didn't. And same with LinkedIn, and even our email systems that we are sending things out. They have analytics on, how many people opened, how many people clicked through. So go back and see what content performed well and what didn't. And again, that takes some time, but all those tools are free and available for us to be utilizing as far as how we're thinking about setting some of this up.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk with our Millennial Maven about some other developments in this year that's historic. Welcome back. We're talking with Katie Lord with Proof Positioning, but she is Casey Cares Millennial Maven. So let's go back to our millennial conversation.
Yes.
Those tools that you provided, I think, run across any age demographic. Let's talk about that millennial pool pre-pandemic, and then what we're seeing in the pandemic and coming out. I found some interesting articles that we'll post that have addressed this.
Excellent.
But I would love to hear your take on where we were, where we are, and where we might look for that millennial.
So millennial donors actually during the pandemic were the most generous generation during the pandemic. 3 out of 4 millennials gave during the pandemic. So we had a 75% giving rate during the pandemic. Now, what again continues to make millennials difficult to track and to truly gauge is we give a lot informally still. So we are one of your top donors in a crowdfunding campaign. We'll give to our neighbor or to a friend that's not a 501c3. And we define that as philanthropy. That has continued. Millennials' interests have also switched a little bit as well. While a lot of people are very focused on frontline, we did have social justice really rise to the forefront of millennial giving. And we will continue to see that based on events that happened, that coincided with the pandemic last year. And so millennials have always been a generation of social change, and that has continued. What I will say about millennials is we are starting to be more cognizant of issue focus. So instead of maybe giving to our friends that, maybe something that we're not as interested in, but we're going to do some of that social support, we're starting to go more into our social support based on issues that we are interested in. So I'm not really giving outside, some millennials who are very interested in social justice are only going to give to social justice organizations, or they're only going to give to domestic violence or animal welfare. So we're starting to shave off some of our causes that we kind of just gave to here and there and become more focused. And I think that has definitely helped. What's been strange this year is we love to see, touch, and feel before we give. We haven't been able to do that. So now what's happening is millennials are becoming more investigative. Since we can't go and experience things right now, we are starting to research the organizations that we give to much more. So 66% of millennials will do research on your organization, whether that's visiting your website, looking at your 990, asking friends about your organization before they will make their first gift to you. So we are spending much more time vetting the organizations that we give to, since we can't really be out volunteering right now.
Should a nonprofit in their pitch, so to speak, or their case for giving, nicer way to say that.
Yes.
Should they be incorporating those things? Should they, in their pitch to you, the millennial, say 98% of what you give to us feeds the hungry, rescues dogs, supports education in the racial justice sphere?
Yes, but you need to personalize it even more than that. So you need to say, Katie, your gift helped Jimmy. And here's Jimmy's story.
So it's storytelling.
It does go back to storytelling. And we understand that if we give large numbers to people, it's really, really hard to comprehend how my $10, $15, $20 is doing, making a difference. But if you can tell me that individual story, and you need to tell me that story about how I affected very quickly, like that should be within the first, I'm going to say 48 hours. I know that for some organizations that's not possible, but at least within the first week, when you acknowledge my gift, but show me the impact. This person got this meal. Show me how I am a cog in the wheel. The number one reason millennials stop giving is they did not feel that their impact was clearly communicated to them. And so that is the number one area that I think all organizations, while it can be incredibly difficult, we all need to be really focused on, is communicating how we are making an impact, because this generation impact is the millennials. We want to see, touch, and feel how we gave, and we want to hear about it immediately, because that will inspire us to give again, not large numbers.
I want to take a little bit of a pivot. When we've talked about millennials, I think there have been stereotypes about millennials. 100%. And one of those, and there may be some accuracy in data, is that I give, if I was a millennial, I give to the cause for rescuing pets, let's say. And I get that passion, I make that gift, but I'm not going to maybe make that gift again. I guess I'm asking a very rounded question for those organizations that are more bucket and count on that year by year. What's happening with the millennial there? Are you seeing any shift?
Right now is a great time to be talking to your millennials about monthly giving. Now is the time, because you can stretch a millennial's gift. You can get a larger gift if you break it down monthly. Monthly donors in general have really good retention rates. They're at a 97% retention rate after the first year. And they're a great prospect for later annual fund and major gifts. But right now is a really good time to be talking to millennials. They're much more conscious of their budgets and are starting to include philanthropy in their budgets instead of kind of I'm giving on a whim or I have some extra. There's much more planning going into that. The key differentiator with millennials is you're right. Millennials are cause focused. They're not organization focused. And so it really does come back to that impact and storytelling to create that connection of how your organization is doing it better than other organizations within that subsector of nonprofits. That's, to me, the $1 billion question of unlocking further millennial giving is how can we switch our cause oriented and how do we get the second gift from millennials? I think it's going to be even harder than some of our other donors because I love to say, and I'm a millennial, I have a short attention span, but I have a long memory. So I will give to certain stuff and maybe not give again. But if you're an organization that did me wrong, or I didn't feel that I was thanked or had a seat at the table, I will remember that forever and you'll be off my list. So we can be fickle. And I think that that's something that it's why it's so important to start having millennials be on your board, not your junior board, on your board, and providing these individuals seats at your table and in these valuable discussions, because we are changing the way philanthropy is going to continue moving forward. And if we don't plan for it now, we'll be constantly making it up. And that's hard. That's a harder position than if we spend the time now.
So converting that gift to a repeat gift sounds like it's still the same challenge that it was before.
It is, just in a different way. Boomers and even some Gen Xers are very loyal in the organizations that they give to. I mean, my mom is a baby boomer and she will write checks to organizations. And I'm like, why are you writing a check to this organization? I've always done it. I don't know if she can tell you exactly where some of her money's going. So with millennials, it's much more of a constant reevaluation of how we want to change the world. And I think that will always follow current events, that will follow, our age as personal passions start to become more clear for us, but also as I think we start to realize that we can't save the world by being non-targeted in our giving.
How should an organization go about doing that personal touch in terms of, you were talking about even a phone call. Mm-hmm. I mean, my kids are millennials. I'm lucky if they answer the phone.
Oh, we're not going to answer. We're not going to answer.
You just want
but we're going to listen to that message. And especially if it's a short message. So there are several organizations here in Kansas City that do a great job. And I will get probably twice a year, maybe 3 times. I'll just get a phone call and it will be from either a board member or it will be from someone who's received the service of the organization that I donate to, thanking me, during a thankathon or something like that. I keep those messages for a little bit because they make me feel really good. I'm not going to pick up the phone. You're right. And that's why I think sometimes people are so hesitant to pick up the phone. They're like, well, what if they answer? It's like, there's a 80% chance that they're going to go, I don't know this number and I'm not picking it up. Or even it's my mom and I'm not going to talk to her right now. So there's other ways to do that. I'm starting to see a rise in texting. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be quite honest with you. I think this is an evolving opportunity. I think that we're going to see more text messaging come up, and text to give is going to come back. And QR codes. I mean, who would have thought QR codes would be a thing? And, the pandemic brought them back. I've seen more QR codes in the past year than I did when QR codes were at their prime. So it's going to be a different way of interacting. And I think we have to be adaptable, that it's not going to be some of those ways that even we're comfortable with. And I'm a millennial and I don't know how comfortable I am with texting, but I have friends who love it. And they're like, oh, I love it when I get my little text update of something cool that happened.
Those phones follow us everywhere.
They do.
They do. We have just a couple of minutes left. I didn't want to be remiss. You are sharing a great opportunity for people that give us a little bit of information about what that is and how folks can engage with it.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. So I am chairing the Association of Fundraising Professionals Mid-America Conference on Fundraising, and it's going to be in person here in Kansas City in September the 19th, 20th, and 21st. We're bringing in 5 national speakers, as well as hearing from some of our local experts and regional experts on how nonprofit has changed. We picked the title, A Brave New World of Philanthropy, pre-pandemic, and I don't think it could be any more perfect now. And so we're really looking forward to having some of those conversations on, how do we represent all of our donors? How do we have inclusivity in the sector? How do we continue to have our digital communications, and how do we integrate that back with our face-to-face meetings and continue to re-evolve and reevaluate how we're going to continue to do philanthropy. So if you go to the afpkc.org website, you can log on there. We're going to start selling early bird registration. Is going to open next month in May. So keep looking out for it. And I'm really looking forward, Ruth, to having you be out there and talking to some of our individuals and speakers and bringing this thought leadership to Kansas City.
Well, that's very exciting. And you are truly all very brave to do an in-person. I'm sure you're having to navigate what that looks like and how much hand sanitizer, and will we be giving the commemorative masks and all that?
Of course.
all that good stuff. Where can folks find you if they want to take a deeper dive into some of the great advice you've given here from millennials?
So I'm on LinkedIn all the time. LinkedIn is my go-to place. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm just Katie Lord on LinkedIn. Or you could always go to the proofpositioning.com website. I have a page on there and my email is on there. So you can always just feel free to shoot me an email. But I love talking about philanthropy, especially our millennial generation. So always happy to help and have coffee and conversations with as many people in the sector as possible.
And we can start having more coffee and conversation as more people become vaccinated. I'm so excited that things are starting to open up, but carefully, and being able to bring this great advice from you. We appreciate your time and your talent and your wisdom beyond measure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares like Katie, or underwriting opportunities to support what we're doing in the sector, please visit our website at kccaresonline.org. And you can spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Thank you for listening to KC Cares.